Okay. Well, welcome. Today, Lauren and Christine and I are going to be talking about sun transits 2 and 23. And we're going to go in and explore and look around and see what we can learn and what we can play with over the next two periods of 5.5 days. And the last few times we've started with a little reflection about what's been happening. And I was preparing for that this time. A poem that has I've used in my coaching practice a lot popped up related to the shadow of addiction and moving through to invention. So I thought I would share that first, and we can see what comes out of that. Okay. So it's an autobiography in 5 short chapters, and it's by Portia Nelson. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it's not my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. I think it sums it up.
Lois, I think that took us right through the 5 days. I mean, we're not there yet, right? Because we're recording a little early, but
Yeah, it's sort of where we've been these last few days. Yeah,
yeah,
that
yeah.
constant
And
learning.
I've never heard it before, so I love that poem. So thank you for introducing me to it. And I wonder if you can't also just make the case that that's every sun transit, every 5 days, right? Like in this progression that we kind of are in each time the energy changes. It's new to us. We're like, cool, let's walk down the street. Ooh, deep hole. Right? And like,
How did I get here?
so yeah, right? Like I love that.
Yeah, and that increasing awareness that gets us to a new place.
Well,
Mhm.
I don't know if either of you do this, but when I approach the 5.5 day period and I read through and I do my readings about each day, I'm like, I got this. I so got this. I know this one. I'm going to be so good at it. And that goes until about day 2.5. And then I'm like, where did that come from? Right. Right now. So there's the hole, right? It shows up then. But I'm, and each time I start just like the chapters. Okay, I've got this.
And why am I here
Yeah. I don't,
again?
yeah. Well, I don't do any prep. So I'm always like, why am I in this hole? Well, it really has become for me like looking at the weather report and just deciding, this will be a planting day, this will be a work indoors day, and to kind of go, oh gosh, I shouldn't have those 5 appointments on this day. That feels really a little treacherous. So just kind of navigate it. I use it as a point of navigation, probably.
And
Anything
some
particular
people,
this week,
Yeah.
Lois, for you?
oh, I was thinking just sometimes it's a remembering too, like sort of bringing back and remembering. Like, oh yeah, I actually do know this. Like, and I wasn't paying attention again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What stood out for me in the poem was the it's not my fault, it's not my fault, it's not my fault. Oh, it's my fault. And then like, oh, and I'm just gonna walk down a different street. But I like that. that framing, right? Like it is, I mean, in some ways it is not our fault, right? The things are coming at us. They have nothing, there is no fault involved, right? And in some ways we do have a responsibility, right? And so it's an interesting progression to be able to discern those things and to become aware, right, of what is ours to control and what is not. And so, and I think, human design would say there's not much that's really ours to control, right?
But we can be aware.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Make choices. So, oh, the path of growth. Yeah.
Love it.
It can be bumpy.
It can be. It just is.
Yeah.
Yes, it's filled with holes.
Yeah. So, shall we
Um,
start talking
yeah.
about Sun Transit 2?
Yes, let's dig into that. So at the very highest level, I think it's going to be interesting because we're at the point of completely closing out this yang part of the year, right? This energy that's very outwardly focused, very action oriented. We've just finished up this thunder, the trigram of thunder that we've been in, which is the arousing, which is this moving and busyness and trying to make things happen in the world. And we're going to enter into the full half of the year that's much more much more yin energy, right? This receptive energy. And gate two it's like double yin. It's the most yin energy in the whole system, right? And so I think it's kind of a nice entryway into this time period to get a sense of what being receptive can feel like, right? And I think in the modern world, receptivity is actually in many ways one of the hardest things, especially as women, that anybody can do, right? It's really hard, I think, for us to take in things. I mean, we get things coming at us all the time, which is different than being receptive to things. I'm not exactly sure what that difference is. Maybe Lois, you can help me articulate that. But um, I just think it's going to be a great time to practice and think about that, maybe trying to discern those differences. What is coming at us and what is it that we're being receptive to? And how can we play around with what works best for us in that space. Um, and the other thing that I want to just point out at the high level for both of these, for this full half of the month, was from the 3rd of May to the 14th of May. The whole planet, again, is going to have channels lit up and human design energy centers lit up. And so for the first half, we're going to have our identity center connected to our throat lit up, the entire planet, right? So this understanding of like this higher knowing connected to our ability to make things happen in the world, connected to this ability to speak and to say and to do and make. So all the planet is going to have that energy on. And then in the second transit, everybody's going to have their throat and their ajna lit up. So this ability to speak their mind. And so I think it might be an interesting thing to play around just noticing in this first half of the year, like what's coming up for you from this higher knowing? What is it that you want to make happen in the world, or what is it that you want to say? And then in the second part of the transit, the gate 23, you may actually have more actual ability to speak the things that you've been feeling and knowing in your body. And so I think that could be, and also other people will be too. So you might also be on the receiving end of some of that. So just being aware that that's going on for everybody might be really helpful.
And that there's a tension in there between that, the giving and the receiving, the speaking and the listening. And most of us think we're pretty good at it. And when we have to work at it, we find out we're not. So being gentle with ourselves through this period as well, because I think it's led to so much of that polarity that's going on, the inability to hold these two sort of in like it's like a paradox. It's both and, not either or.
Yeah, and like any new habit, when we feel what that feels like, then it's easier to attain it again and again, right? So holding on and just allowing that to be, oh, that's what that feels like. We can find our way back to that place. I also want to note that Pluto's retrograding in Aquarius, also in gate 2. And so I think that adds some interest to the mix. So we want to just be aware of that, which is meant to bring some intensity. So that could be that inner struggle of being receptive.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, gate 2 is also, it's called higher knowing in human design, right? It really is the seat of our, I mean, for lack of in human design, we call it the magnetic monopole, right? It's the thing that is us at that core. A soul, I mean, whatever language you want to call it, it lives in gate 2 from a human design perspective. And so it is this embedded piece of us that is our truest self, right? Now, whether we have connection to that and whether we feel able to speak from that or to live through that, now that's obviously different, but each of us contain it and each of us have this higher knowing. And so this might be a real stretch of time to be, playing around a little bit more with like what is my truth? What do I feel like? Not so much what I think, right? Again, thinking is messy. Thinking is very conditioned, but what we feel like in our body is more closely aligned to who we are. And so this is a really great time at this time of the year. I mean, it's like I said, we're switching from this yang to this yin. We're in this receptive space. So, really being receptive to what the earth, I mean, we're in this earth. We flip from thunder into earth as a bottom trigram. So we're in this really earthy Taurus energy, grounded, like who we are at our true core. I think there's a lot of supportive energy right now to play around with that and to rely on that to maybe show you some things that, you know, you don't always feel you have the time or space for. So,
There's that connection with higher self. And I know in the Gene Keys, the shadow is referred to as dislocation. And I was looking at that as dislocation from ourselves because there's like connected, yes, connected to the whole world. But I think most of us lose connection with ourselves. And so often looking outside of ourselves for an answer or a solution or something like that. But that needing to remember back to me, that in that I'm okay here. And when you're connected to higher self, there's a sense of serenity that comes. And being able to differentiate between being in higher self and being an ego self is really helpful here. Because when you're in ego self, there's this straining and trying to make things happen. And it's not that there's wrong with to make things happen, but when we're trying to control things and we're trying to force things to happen, we're really caught in our ego self and disconnected from that higher self that knows. So we lose connection with this tremendous wisdom that we all carry. And that goes right to paying attention to what's going on in your body, like you said, Christine.
We've come out of this gate where the lower density was addiction, and we talked last time about possibly using hops to reconnect. And so if folks had that opportunity and followed along with hops, now they're in a place where they can make use of being reconnected with self, which is exactly what hops did. You still have time. We have 1.5 days before the next gate starts. But the extract then that came up for me that would be a beautiful follow-on for this is, okay, I can start to be with myself and step out of being out there, settling into that and being able to receive, as you said, is our struggle, Christine. Rosemary is what comes to mind in a microdose. And
mm,
rosemary has a really interesting action. It is a tonic. However, what it does is it brings about this really sharp clarity and calmness. So both. So, and I think we were in a conversation earlier today, Christine, about you can't be clear if you're not calm. And so it brings both of those in together. And if you look at rosemary as an herb and how it's been used throughout folklore, it's always about cleansing, right? And so like clearing away the ego, clearing away the distractors, and helping us be calm in the moment so we can receive that higher knowledge.
Yeah. And that's what I think about when I think about our identity center and our throat both being defined. It is like it's this being in the world through our higher self, right? And I think that that is, and just having a sense of, the other part of our identity, and the other part about gate 2 is has this very strong sense of direction, right? Where we're going in the world and how we're moving forward into the future. um so yeah, I mean, I could see where like the clarity, I mean, sounds to me like rosemary is kind of like a clarity of mind,
Mhm.
while this gate energy is like clarity of soul and clarity of purpose and clarity of the body, right? And so that combination would be really lovely.
I was wondering if like some of the polyvagal work that we've been doing it connects in here in terms of like that getting away from being sort of run by our minds,
Sure.
the
Mhm.
starting to pay more attention to what our nervous system is offering us in that ability to connect with our higher selves, because there's so much information coming to us, and if we're tight and not paying attention, we can't hear it, we can't feel it. And so just to be able to sort of tap into that, and then I mean that's where our instinct and our intuition starts to come forward, and we're really cut off from that in our world today. Like without all
Yeah.
our tools and gadgets, we don't even know how to survive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Lois, I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say is this moving out of story into state. And uh, there's a lot of story right now. There's a lot of story, and a lot of story that is happening to us, right?
Mhm.
It's not,
Mm.
we're not responsible. It's just happening to us. And so when we can move out of that and just step into your experience, then we have so much more capability for clarity and understanding, compassion, creativity, all the important
Mhm.
things.
Yeah, and then we
Mhm.
can do something.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
finding out where you connect, because people have a feeling in their body when they're connected to their higher self. And most people, it seems to be somewhere in this area, not everyone, but to be able to tap into where is that in your body. And then if you're feeling disconnected, is to put your hands wherever that is and just invoke it to come back.
Yeah.
I'm ready to receive that connection again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think again about this idea of receptivity, right? Like it's very tied up with boundaries, right? Because things are coming at us all the time, and we are receptive to them, mostly in a very negative way, I think, right? Because we just live in a world that is sending so much stuff to us. And so I just think about, I don't know, there's something that's coming up for me around this, like, how do we stay in a mode of receptivity without being a dumping ground, right? Without being like the thing, like everything is mine. And that's, I don't know, I don't have an answer for that, but I do think that it might be something worth contemplating this next few days to see if you can really discern, what feels good and to take in and what doesn't, you know.
And it might also be sitting with a little discomfort in surrendering to receiving, because I know, especially with
Yeah.
women, it's not all women, but
Yep.
some men as well, is they give and they give and they give. And like I know when I'm working with people, is trying to even put them on their list, let alone at the top of their list, is extremely difficult.
Hmm.
Because there's this huge discomfort in taking anything, even though they think everybody else should take.
Yeah.
So being able to let somebody else do something for you, even if you feel uncomfortable, and just to sit with that and see if you can sit through it
Mm.
and uh, and learn from it.
Yeah.
It's like riding out the turbulence on a flight.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There was one exercise I saw. It was like putting on a blindfold and letting somebody lead you around a room. It's like where you're giving up. You don't have control, and it can be pretty weird. But if you're
Hmm.
with somebody that you trust when you do it, it's a way to step into receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think this trust piece is really big too, Lois. It's like when I think of a defined identity, I think about self-trust, right? I feel like there's an innate sense that I know where I am. I know at this higher self level who I am. I'm consistent. I know where I'm going, or I know I am going. I might not always know where. And I trust myself and the world to be there for me. And not everybody has that definition. A lot of people have an open identity center, but this week, these 5 days, everybody will have that, right? So it might be really fun to play around with. Do you notice a deeper sense of this self-trust, right? Can you push on that a bit to try to see, oh, right, like this is what that feels like. Sometimes you're not even aware of what that feels like, right? Just tapping into that might be really valuable.
I
All
think we're
right, are we
getting
on
to that.
23?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on 23.
Okay,
Let's
okay.
do it.
All right, let's move on. Okay. So gate 23, next one in the gate, also an Earth, lower trigram Earth. This one is mountain over Earth. So it's interesting that it shows up right after two, because this is, we were talking about being still, right? Like learning our own inner workings a little bit better. This gate 23 time period has a bit of that time, of that energy. Like, what is this? I can be more still to actually pay more attention to what my body is telling me in this particular case, right? And so I think that might be a really interesting practice as well. So we've got a nice long stretch of time to really play around with both of these aspects of listening and then, sitting with it and contemplating it maybe. But gate 23 is the gate of assimilation. It is also called splitting apart in the I Ching, or slicing off. Um, it sits in our human design body graph. It's in our ajna. It's in our head. So this is why our head and throat, our ajna and throat, will be defined for everyone on the planet. Um, and this is one of those gates where the opposing gate, the programming partner in from a Gene Keys language, is the actual other end of the gate. So we have gate 23 that week, and then the Earth placement is 43, which is the full channel, right? And so these we have like 3 or 4 of these each year. And again, this is why this channel is always lit up for everybody every year. So this is a good year to just notice that and play around with that and see if you notice this ability to speak more directly or more clearly, or more inspirationally, right? Like this energy has a lot to do with like flashes of insight, right? It's called, we call it the genius to freak channel, because it is this idea where you can get these amazing ideas and you can speak them, and somebody who's receptive to it will be like, oh my God, that's amazing. I can't believe you just, came up with that. And then somebody that it doesn't connect with will be like, you are a weirdo. I don't even know what you're talking about, right? And so there's definitely this energy for everyone. So I'm kind of excited to see what kind of maybe there's going to be some amazing ideas that show up in the middle of May. It's possible.
I was looking at how in this the communication, like the sharing of ideas and of people's ability to receive what we're offering, or us to be able to receive what they're offering, has so much to do with our more subtle energies. Because it's something I've worked on, especially with people in dealing with conflict, in that If you go into a room assuming that there's going to be conflict, that energy precedes you into the room and you'll find it, because you're busy creating it as you walk in. So, in just looking at that, when we speak from our hearts, um, you can say even difficult things if you're speaking from your heart and people can receive it. But if it's just coming from your head, something gets lost in the translation with other people. It feels flat, or it feels like you don't really mean it. And so they don't receive it in the same way. So that knowing what's going on for us coming out of uh, Sun Transit 2, and being aware of what's going on for us as we go into any interaction is going to help smooth that along. Or we should know that we're going like, I've had a rough day. Maybe I should tell them that first.
Yeah, I was thinking about a good follow-in from Rosemary into this gate because I think these two gates really do play off of each other really nicely, and I think the always the lessons we learn in one 5.5 day period feed into the next, but this one feels particularly um, clear or obvious. And so when I think about, looking at the gene keys and how does someone move from complexity to simplicity? Like, what does that take? And I think one thing is context, right? And we can just look at this from a nervous system point of view, that everything that's new and unfamiliar feels complex to us. And once we gain context, we can bring it down and things begin to feel clear. And then going along with that, supporting it with the full package is choice and connection. And then suddenly something that seemed beyond us or is doable and it's within reach. And so I was thinking about what Gemmo does that really nicely and kind of plays into that opportunity to be a genius in the moment. And I think this is silver birch seed. And silver birch seed in itself is a super simple extract in that a seed is both very complex because it has everything you need to create a full plant, in this case, a full tree. But it's actually really a simple entity. You look at it and there's not a lot of moving parts, and it's quite simple. But one of the things that silver birch seed does really beautifully is it's really nutrition for the brain. And when our brain is given what it needs, that central nervous system can settle. Anytime our needs are nurtured, then we settle, and then things become clearer, more simple, more accessible to us. The other thing that it has, though, and I think this is the part that makes this pretty special, is it's a adaptogen. So in that it also has a bit of dopamine surge that will help us get the thing done or say the thing that needs to be said, but with clarity and precision, because we've already been given our nervous system everything it needs. So we may need a activated sympathetic state to say these things, but silver birch seed will help organize our thoughts, and help us probably sound more brilliant than we would on our everyday walk of life. So I think it would be especially fun is a great word here, because we're all experimenting and playing, for folks to give that a try and just see if it doesn't give them what they need so they can show up and calmly and precisely share what's on their mind.
Yeah, and I think a practice that could go with that, almost more like an action for practice, would be when something looks too big or feels monumental, and you kind of like go, how am I going to do that? Is to just take a pause and sit back and see if you can break it down into some component parts and go like, okay, where can I, what's the one step I can take in that direction? Like a metaphor that was used with a fellow I knew as a coach. This guy feels like he wants to eat the whole sandwich at once, and it's like I just need to take a
Mhm.
bite at a time.
Sure.
Yeah,
So it's not overwhelming.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I again like this. These are the times we live in too, right? Like these gene keys of the shadow of complexity and the gift of simplicity and the city of quintessence, right? Like we live in complex times, right? And not only are they complex, they're complicated, right? And two things, they don't always have to come together. You can have complex things that aren't complicated, but that's not the case here. And so this energy, I do think, is a time for us to really just sit with this thing that, we have a complex, we've created a complex life, right? That is not serving any of us, right? And we know this. But we also don't really know how to create simplicity. And I've always said, like, I'm a graphic designer by training, and one of the earliest lessons I learned was that simplicity is hard. It just is not easy, right? And if you see something that is beautiful and simple and makes sense, somebody worked really hard to distill that down to the essence of what you needed to know, right? And that's what this quintessence is, right? It's getting at the essence. Um, and again, like I don't have any answers, but I do think it's going to be an interesting time to really think about and try to remove what complexity we can from our lives during this transit, because there will be support for that, and being receptive to simplicity, right? Because again, we have a lot of conditioning in our culture that, simple life is somehow inadequate. Right? I mean, even though there's all kinds of evidence that people that have the simplest lives seem to be the most content. So, just play around, I think, with that. Like, where can I reduce complexity in my life?
Mhm.
Where can I simplify? And how does that make me feel?
It's funny in the like with synchronicities that come up when you're more open. It's just as you're talking about that, three different things I've read in the last couple of days had referred to Walden's Pond, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
has been questioned even way back when he wrote that.
yeah.
And then there's this pressure to keep adding the complexities. You need to add this app and you need to have that system, and you couldn't possibly live without it, could you?
Right.
And we're like, well, maybe playing with what you could live without and seeing if it what that does for you would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Uh, And listening to both of you talk, I think that we're back to that thought of it's a choice, right? And it's definitely a lifestyle choice. And yes, we live in a complex and world, but we can choose to live simply. But it isn't a snap of the fingers or a turn of the light switch. It's a daily activity of
Mm-hmm.
asking exactly that question, Christine. How could I do that more simply? How could I approach that more simply? And maybe that would be the practice of the week, is just asking yourself as often as you can and you approach things, is there a simpler way to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I'll make my life easier that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I think also it speaks again to this energy, this genius to freak energy, right? Like even when we ourselves decide to do something more simply, we don't live in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Somebody out there is going to tell us that we're doing it wrong, or that we have a bad idea, or that we're never right. Like we're out of step in some way. And that, again, isn't a good thing, right? And so, really sitting with this idea, like they might see me as a freak, but this feels in my body like genius, right? Like I feel so smart by letting myself off the hook and not doing that thing that seems so complex, right? And so just recognizing that is going to be true. I think that we're going to feel those pressures from the outside like we always do, but recognizing that we feel those pressures when we choose the complex way too. We're never doing that right either.
Or enough. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
This sounds like be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it is. Exactly.
All right. Well, we always come to a very sudden, but there we are.
Yeah.
We're done.
There we are.
Yep. Simple. It seems simple.
I think it's a real generator thing. The energy just goes, and when it's done, we
Yeah.
stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we all have defined throats?
Yeah.
Do we?
Mm.
No, no, Lois doesn't. No,
No.
Lois doesn't. Okay. All right.
So you're
Okay.
allowed to talk more than Lois.
Yeah.
I
I
think
love
one
it.
of the reasons that I wound up as a coach is I don't tend to talk as much. So, all
I
right.
love that. Cool.
So thank you for being with us, and we hope we'll see you next week.